So there are two broad paradigms in research. One is what we call as the quantitative research. The other one is called as the qualitative research. Quantitative research is, also let me clarify at the outset that both of these paradigms classify as or qualify as empirical research. So please don't remain under the conception that only quantitative research is empirical work, qualitative research is not empirical work. No, both of them are empirical works. The focus or the aim of the two streams is different. Quantitative research is said to be theory testing. That means you have certain relationships that you have thought of. You have created logical arguments to link certain constructs and you want to test them, right? That is where the quantitative research comes in. Whereas qualitative research is a paradigm, is a stream of work, is a stream of research where we are actually building an understanding of the phenomena. We are trying to understand either phenomena, or we are trying to understand experiences of people, or we are trying to develop theory around certain things that are happening. So qualitative research broadly is said to be theory building. That means we are trying to understand what is happening, trying to get a sense of make sense of what people are experiencing, what people are going through, what is happening in the environment. Whereas quantitative research is once you have formed the broad model or broad understanding, I am now trying to test it in using numbers and using statistical technique. But both of them are still important. Both of them are empirical work. The focus of inquiry is different. So I have formed a small table and we'll go step by step. So philosophical assumptions. Let us look at the philosophical assumptions and what do they understand. What do they mean? So philosophical assumptions or underpinning of the quantitative research is what we call as positivism or post-positivism. Largely it is called as a positivistic approach. What is a positivistic approach? Can anybody tell me what do you understand by positivism? This is a philosophy of science question.
Lekha here.
Yeah.
If I'm not wrong, positivism means that we believe that there is only one set of reality in the world, and I have some established manners or methods through which I can find out that reality.
Okay. So positivism is is a stream of work where we think that there is a reality that exists, and our role as researchers is to understand, examine, and actually bring that actual reality out. So we want to develop understanding of how the world actually works. Whereas a qualitative work, there are different streams. There could be positivistic approach. There are some yawners of qualitative research where they also believe that there is a reality, we want to understand it. Whereas largely there is also a stream of very strong school of thought in qualitative research which says that there is no reality actually. What is reality is our own interpretation of the world. So it says that reality for me, Vishal Gupta, is different from reality for all of you. We all make our own worlds, we all make our own interpretations of that world. And as qualitative researchers, we want to understand experiences of people. We want to study how people understand certain phenomena happening around them, and we want to capture those experiences. That is where the richness of the research really lies. So there could be different underpinnings of, whereas quantitative research is a very positivistic approach, which says that we want to understand what is the reality, how it exists, and what are the relationships between them. The logic is said to be, there are two words that you would often hear in research. One is called as inductive, another one is called as deductive. Inductive means qualitative research is always inductive. What does inductive mean? Inductive means from specific experiences of people making generalizations. That means we move from, or we start with interviews of people, we start with study of experiences of people, and we build our understanding of phenomena grounded up. So that means bottom up. That means we start from the specific experiences of individuals and go to the broad understanding of the phenomena or of whatever issue that we have in mind. So it's called as an inductive approach, building bottom up. Whereas quantitative research is deductive. What is deductive approach? If you look at the paper that we were doing of job characteristics and motivation, job characteristic, engagement, and turnover intention, we said that, you see, there is a broad stream of work around job characteristic, there is a stream of work around work engagement, there's a stream of work around turnover intention. So we study the literature around these constructs, and based on our study of literature, we deduce or we frame that there will be relationship between job characteristic, engagement, and turnover intention. So quantitative research starts from the broad literature that exists, and from the reading of the literature, we come down to the specific hypothesis that we want to test in our study. So that is called as deduction or deducing or deductive logic. Whereas qualitative research says, I want to start by studying specific experiences of people, their what do they think about certain phenomena, and then we collect many such experiences, many such interviews, and then try to come up with a broad generalization about what do people feel or experience and so on. So that's the difference between inductive and deductive logic. The inquiry aim, as I also said earlier also, the inquiry aim of quantitative research is theory testing or explanation also that we call. That means we predict, we want to say X would cause Y, I want to test it empirically, right? Whereas qualitative research is more focused on understanding, explorations, descriptions, reconstructions, critiquing also at times. What do people behave? What do people feel? What do people experience? And trying to create certain understandings around that. So the inquiry aim is more on explorations and understanding of certain phenomena and creating some theoretical understandings around that. The knowledge that we create, we call them in quantitative research, we call it as non-falsified hypotheses that are probable facts or laws. So again, this second part of the sentence again comes from the positivistic approach. These are facts or laws which have been tested based on hypothesis. So they are non-falsified hypotheses. Non-falsified hypotheses mean that these are hypotheses that we have not rejected. We have failed to reject, and therefore we believe that they are facts and this is how the world operates. Whereas the qualitative researcher says, no, it is not fact or law. Well, these are our individual experiences, individual reconstructions, and if a lot of people agree, then this is perhaps what the true reality is. This is, so I want to understand how people are experiencing those phenomena, and I build around that. So there are no numbers here. It is more of understanding people's feelings, people's experiences of certain phenomena. Quality criteria, well, if you look at quantitative papers, it is very easy. You have reliability figures, you can quote numbers, you can say if the reliability Cronbach alpha is greater than zero point 0.7, then it is reliable. The validity, you can test again relationships. So the quality criteria is quite objective here in quantitative research. Whereas in qualitative research, well, it is subjective. You have to believe on the trustworthiness of the authors and the authenticity of the way in which they are collecting data. So if you look at qualitative papers, if you read qualitative papers, you would often find that qualitative papers are very, very rich in description. They describe to very minute detail on how people were interviewed, how data was collected, how the data was analyzed. So because there are no objective criteria, what you bank upon in qualitative research is the detail, the way in which people report their findings, report the way they have collected data. Quantitative research, well, a researcher has no role to play. They are dispassionate. They are basically just like instruments or tool. We collect data based on surveys. We feed the data into systems. We run our softwares. We get some numbers and we report that number, believing what the number is telling is true. Whereas in qualitative research, the qualitative researcher, the researcher is very much a part of data collection. He or she is very much a part of data interpretation. All the patterns, the theory that is going to be developed, the way the analysis is going to be done of the experiences of the interviews, it is very, very dependent on the values of the researcher. So there is a big role of qualitative researcher because he or she is going to be involved in data interpretation, data collection, data analysis. For quantitative research, on the other hand, it is hardcore statistical techniques, and there is no control of the researcher. If I feed in certain numbers into the software and run a regression, I get my beta coefficients, regression coefficients. I have no role to play in saying that beta should be high or low. The system tells me this is what the number is, and I have to live with that number. I have to then interpret that number and report my findings in the paper, right? So as I said, this is a disinterested scientist. Disinterested does not mean a bored scientist. Disinterested means that he or she is not going to influence the results of the study, right? Whereas in a qualitative research, a qualitative researcher is very much a part of all the experiences that are going to be captured. So he or she is going to uh, they are going to first of all identify which are the experiences that need to be captured, which are the experiences that need to be reported, who are the participants whom they should be interviewing, how should the interview happen, what kind of questions are to be asked, how is that data to be collected, how is that data to be analyzed. So all those kinds of things are dependent on the researcher. Training of these two schools of research. Quantitative researcher, well, you are trained on numbers, statistics, psychology, sorry, not psychology, probability, statistics, psychometrics, all those kinds of trainings happen, scale constructions, reliability, validity, and so on. You read about what are the existing theories, because those are the theories on which you are going to deduce your hypothesis and so on. On the other hand, qualitative researchers, they are trained in techniques such as interviewing, they are trained in techniques such as case writing, they are trained in techniques such as documenting histories, biographies of people. They are trained on uh, they are actually, qualitative researchers are supposed to be good writers. They should have a knack of story writing, storytelling, much more than quantitative researchers. Quantitative researchers can bank upon numbers, bank upon rules to tell them what has to be done, whereas qualitative researchers are more trained in more arts like, I'm not saying arts like subjects, but their training has to be arts like, where they should be reading and writing. Methodologies, well, we know experiments, regressions, ANOVAs, all of these are different methodologies that people, whereas qualitative researchers interviews,
So,
yeah,
so I'm Gio.
yes, you.
So can you tell some checkpoints to maintain the quality of a case study research method?
Yes, just a minute. Let me just complete, and then I'll take this question. Associated methods. What are the things that people have to keep in mind? Survey constructions, probability, sampling issues, inferential statistics. Inferential statistics are nothing but hypothesis testing, and those kinds of tests, ANOVAs, regression. Whereas typically qualitative researchers, these are three of the very popular techniques that are adopted. And I would say, if you were to look at qualitative research, if I can add one, let me just add one more discipline here, which is, um, if you were to look at, I think these four techniques would constitute about 80 to 90% of all qualitative analysis, that is, all qualitative work that is done. Grounded theory is one of the most popular way or method of qualitative research. Grounded theory is a technique whereby you look at experiences, you sample experiences of people, and based on these experiences of people, you try to construct a theory out of it, right? Ethnography. Ethnography studies are studies that originated in anthropology, which is ethnography is nothing but study of cultures of groups or societies. So ethnography is where the qualitative researcher actually immerses himself or herself in the culture of the group, and then tries to experiences that culture and documents that the culture of that specific. Case studies. Case studies are stories. Case studies are nothing but stories of individuals or organizations which document how certain things have happened over time for that specific individual or group of individuals, which could be teams or organizations, and they usually report some specific dilemmas, some specific challenges that those individuals have faced over time, and how those people have resolved those challenges, those dilemmas. Uh, so case study research is a very popular kind of research in especially strategy, where you do case studies of certain organizations and explore how they took strategic decisions. Case study researches are also done in human resource management to document things that organizations have done, how they have tackled HR issues. So you document case study, and then based on those case studies, analyze and get to certain themes or findings. Thematic analysis is a more generic kind of approach. It can stand all by itself. So you can have thematic papers where you read a phenomena, study a phenomena, and cull out certain themes. Or you can combine thematic analysis with grounded theory, case study, identify themes in that study that you are doing, ethnography and so on. Coming to,
So, Soumya here. Sir, I
yes,
have a doubt that is it necessary that wherever authors use grounded theory in their paper, they'll also use thematic analysis? Because I have read a few qualitative papers. I'm working on spirituality, basically. So I have read many papers where authors claim that they have used grounded theory in the sense that they kept on collecting data unless they reach the stage of sample saturation.
yes.
And then they have taken out certain themes. So I wanted to know that is it necessary that wherever grounded theory will be applied, it will be accompanied by thematic analysis, or it is not necessary?
Yeah. So if you see grounded theory is and in every qualitative research, basically you'll have large chunks of qualitative data, that is subjective data, textual data, right?
Yes.
We'll have those would be logs of interviews, logs of observations, and so on. So what you've got to do is you have to code this data. Now, grounded theory has its own manual of coding. So Glaser and Strauss, they were the propounders of grounded theory, and they came up with their own structure of coding for grounded theory, which has become very, very popular. It is called as uh, uh, open coding, okay, axial coding, which is open coding is where you actually identify themes. So it's a kind of thematic analysis. Then you form categories based on those open coding, and then axial coding is where you actually link one theme to the other. So you find interrelationships between those open codes or those themes. And then the third one is called as selective coding, where you identify which is the best phenomena that you want to document, or which is the theory that you want to document in the study. So thematic analysis is actually, as I mentioned earlier also, thematic analysis is a generic technique that is applied in coding of the data. That is, in that textual data, you want to identify what are the specific themes. Okay, how would you would give labels to different texts, and based on that you will give a second order code. So those are all examples of thematic analysis. But in grounded theory, they have their own nomenclature of these codings, and they call it as open coding, axial coding, and selective coding. Uh, Similarly, in case studies don't have open coding or those kinds of things, but case studies will document the history of that person or the group or the organization. And based on that, you will do some thematic analysis. So case study, again, what is a case study? You will interview a particular individual over time. You will interview that person, you will interview people who are working with that person, and so again you will have interview records, and then based on that interview record you will do coding and identify what are the important themes that emerge from those interviews that can actually explain what is happening in that particular case study, and then use those themes to write about and that case example to talk about certain phenomena or certain uh, understanding that emerges about the research question that you have. Just to give you an example, and this may also answer the question Geo asked, we are currently working on a case study of a social enterprise. And we have been working with this enterprise for last 2.5 years, where over time we have been documenting various things that the enterprise has been doing and various decisions that people have been taking in the enterprise. So we have some questions that we want to answer. So we have a research question. Now, using that research question as a guiding light, we are interviewing people, we are interviewing leaders of the enterprise, we are interviewing employees of the enterprise, we are interviewing stakeholders, board members, we are interviewing customers of the enterprise to really understand how does this organization approach the research question that we have in mind. I cannot give you exact details as of now because it is a work under progress, but I just want to highlight the fact that we have been working with this organization for about 2.5 years. We have done about 15 to 20 interviews. We have done 3-4 focus group discussions with employees, with customers, and we have a good amount of textual data which we are analyzing to cull out specific themes that can explain what is happening in this particular organization and how they are trying to sort of address this challenge that the organization is facing. So
I have a question here.
there is no number. It's all about interviews and textual data. Yeah, Brinda.
Yeah, Vrinda here. A question here is, if somebody is a part of the organization, how ethical is it? You are going out from outside as researchers into the social enterprise, but if an employee, or say the HR head of the social enterprise, collects data while being inside through a qualitative methodology,
Yeah.
how ethical is that, and is there any way of separating out a researcher's perspective from somebody who's inside the organization?
You see, there are, so first of all, on the ethics issue, there is no problem on the ethics issue. The thing is, obviously, you need to take clearance from, you should not, so when we are working with this enterprise, we are very open about the work and we have sought all the permissions from the top to the people who have to take decisions. So they have agreed to us doing this work. Similarly, I think you should not do it in stealth mode. You should be open about it. You should take clearances. And once you do that, it is quite okay. So actually, I have these two examples. So the source is this book. It's a good book if somebody is interested in qualitative work, you can look it up and see if you can get a copy and read it. Qualitative Research and Evaluation Methods by Michael Quinn Patton. So and he gives in this chapter 3, exhibit 3.6, some variety of qualitative inquiry and what are the different kinds of qualitative inquiries that can exist. So if you look at, Vrinda, specifically to your question,
Yeah.
Ethnography, the first one is, as I mentioned, ethnography looks at what is the culture of the group of people. How does a culture evolve in a certain group? Whereas there is also a new stream of qualitative work which is called as autoethnography. What is autoethnography? Autoethnography is I am actually embedded in that organization, in that group. And I write about my own experiences of this culture, connect with experiences, and through my own documents, through my own writings, I offer insights about the situation, event, or the way of life. So you can very well be embedded. You can very well be a part of the organization and collect data. And similarly, there is heuristic inquiry. What is my experience of this phenomena and the experience of others? So you talk about your own experience. You also interview others, talk about others' experience. Autoethnography is only about your own experience. Heuristic inquiry is you document your own experiences, you document others' experience also, and then come up with an understanding, co-develop an understanding of the whole phenomena and write about it. So there are different ways of looking at it. There are things, grounded theory, as I mentioned, what theory emerges from systematic comparative analysis and is grounded in fieldwork so as to explain what has been. So there's whole lots of ways in which,
Sir, I have a question, Devanshu calling.
yes.
I have done some interview in an organization, but what I found is that people are very cautious about telling about the things. They are scared whether if they say something against the management, and then management will put them in a trouble. So
Yeah.
what is the way to avoid this?
So the way to avoid this, Devanshu, is first of all, you have to convince them about the confidentiality of the work that you are doing, and that you are not going to, you have to sort of make them believe that you are not going to share this data with anybody, and it will always reside with you. Okay. The second thing is, you see, confidence develops over time. So you have to engage with those people over time, and maybe they will not open up again, no, open up in the first instance. So interview them for 10-15 minutes, then go back to them again, and then if you do it 2-3 times, they will know you better, you will know them better, and hopefully you will be able to establish a rapport. So it is very important. I understand what you are saying, that talk about the experiences honestly, but somehow you will have to convince that you are honest and you are not going to share the details with.
Formal relationship has to be generated.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is very, very important in qualitative research.
And please share the name of the book.
Yeah, it is there. I will share this presentation anyways, it's called as Qualitative Research and Evaluation Methods by Michael Quinn Pattern. There's another book, Miles and Huberman, Qualitative Research.
Please write in a Word file and please share it with.
I will share that. Yeah.
Sir, I have a question, Swati here. Sir, it is related to case study. Sir, we can develop case study based on a secondary data. For example, if we see one organization is doing good in a certain aspect, and then we can go back and collect data from annual reports, do we still need to seek permission to get it published?
If it is purely on secondary data, no. If
Okay,
it is on published data, you don't need.
Okay, sir.
But if it is about somebody's experiences and some interviews, then obviously you need permission.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So,
Sir, Divakar Singh.
Yes.
Sir, suppose you are going for ethnographic study. What is better? Is it a participant observation or as a non-participant observation?
It is very much participant observation. So you have to become a part of that group.
Okay.
Ethnography is always being a part of the group.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So Lekha here. I had a query for the quantitative methods. So when you say that the researcher is not very involved and has the influence is denied as per the slide. In this context, I wanted to ask, is it preferable that the researcher is not around when the person is filling up the survey? Is it presumed that there might be some effect of our physical presence near the respondent?
Well, you see that is not a question of quantitative research. It is more of a question of convenience of the participants. At times, what will happen is the respondent will tell you, leave the survey, I will fill it later, right? So you cannot stay there anyways.
Okay.
Times you will find people who will say, sit down, I will fill it up right now and give it to you. So that is also acceptable. So I think there you don't have to, your presence does not influence. Uh, I would actually feel that if it is possible, then getting the questionnaire filled in front of you is much better, because in case the respondent has any query or question, they can ask you and fill it in a much better way,
Okay, sir.
rather than making assumptions and then filling the question.
But
So,
sir, in this case, a lot of these survey instruments are sent through online methods. Even though the response rates are very low,
very
at
low.
least it gives us access to those people who are, say, very, staying very long away, probably in Delhi or some other state.
Yes, yes, yes. So these are, you see, these are all issues of logistics, conveniences. So that is why I said being present or not being present does not really make a difference. If it is possible, get it filled in front of you. If it is not possible, you cannot do anything anyways. You will have to send it to them and they will fill it and send it back. So,
Understood, sir.
your presence is not going to make or break anything.
So
I have a question.
Yes.
So Bushra this side. So when we are talking about the autoethnography perspective, I just wanted to know that when you're writing, let's say for example, a case on the organization, how do you come up and convince the organization when there are certain scenarios which would be negative for the organization when you're writing a case about them?
Very difficult, Bushra. You will. I would say it is difficult to convince them. No organization will be happy that negative things are being written about them. So what you can at the maximum do is try to convince them that we are going to use it for academic purpose. We will not write very negatively about it. So you see what happens is positive and negative, both judgments, right? So you are, if so, as a writer, as a documenter, you should never let, especially in cases, you should never let your own judgments bias your writing. So you should write it in a negative, in a neutral manner. You should just document what has happened in the organization, right? If the things are negative, you just write it as a matter of fact. So you actually report what is happening in the reality. Don't bring in any judgments, and let people decide whether it's a good thing, bad thing, why did it happen, and so on. So that is one thing. So that means what I'm trying to say here is you can tell the organization that we are going to report it in a very neutral manner. We are not going to say that this is bad. We are just going to say this is what has happened. Okay. The
Okay.
second thing is even after this, if they do not agree, you have no other option but not to write it, because or use secondary data to report it if it is available.
Sure,
But
sir. And also, can it be anonymous?
yeah,
there be anonymity in when you're writing about the organization, when you're writing a case about them? I mean, obviously taking prior permissions.
Yeah, but not for research. So in yeah, actually, you can mask out their names. Even in research also, you can mask out their names. Uh, in case writing, the kind of cases that we study and use in classrooms, that is definitely possible. You can fictionalize the actors, you can fictionalize the organization. Don't give the actual name, give them any random name, and you can have the case. In terms of paper writing, research paper writing, you can try it out. There may be some journals who may say that no, we want the actual name of the organization. You can give them proper reasons to why you are masking it and see what happens. Maybe those journals will accept
Okay, sure. Thank you, sir.
Sir, I'm Gio. I want to ask one more question.
it.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please go ahead.
So, in case study research, if we are collecting secondary data, how far is the chance of getting published in quality journal?
Just based on secondary data, Geo, it is difficult. It is difficult because journals actually expect some primary uh, interviews and some primary data. You can supplement primary data with secondary data, that is possible. But just having secondary data may be difficult. You can try it, but my understanding is it may be difficult to publish.
Okay.
Sir, I have a question. Devanshu calling.
Not just research, but even actually writing cases. Because unless you have a very good collection of the secondary data, that means the event has been reported a lot. It is difficult to publish. Yeah.
So Devanshu calling. Say I want to examine the relationship between employee motivation and the organizational performance. Here, employee motivation is collected from the employees through a questionnaire, say 1 to 5 scale or something like that, and the performances are some pre-designed methods are the what should I say, the profit loss or something like that. So one portion is the dependent variable is a published data, and the non-dependent in a structured format, and the independent variable is a what should I say, the primary data. So how can I this mix manage, and what are the systems? How can I this relationship can be established?
So let us go to the next thing that I want to talk about, which is called as mixed methods research. So there is a school of thought